The morning of my father's retirement party, I woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of him pacing the kitchen floor, the same slow, deliberate rhythm I'd memorized since childhood, back when I used to press my ear against the hallway wall just to feel close to him without interrupting whatever serious thing lived behind his eyes. His name was General Raymond Colt Hargrove. Mine was Renly Joe Hargrove, and for most of my 26 years on this earth, I had lived in the comfortable, complicated shadow of that man. It was a Saturday in late September, the kind of morning that Virginia does better than anywhere else in the country. Gold light cutting through oak trees, the air tasting faintly of wood smoke and cut grass. Mom had ordered a catering tent, string lights, and more folding chairs than our backyard had ever seen. She was inside coordinating deliveries, barking warmly into her phone like she always did, making everything look effortless and actually working twice as hard as anyone in the room. Dad found me eating cereal at the kitchen island. "Renly?" His voice hadn't changed in 30 years, I was convinced. Low, measured, with a kind of quiet authority that didn't need volume to fill a space. "Morning, Dad." He set down his mug. "I need those folding chairs from the garage set up along the back fence line before 2 o'clock. 2 rows. Leave a center aisle." I nodded. "Sure." He picked his mug back up, started toward his study, then stopped in the doorway. Didn't turn around, just added, almost casually, "And, Renly, once the guests start arriving, try not to be seen too much, all right? Stay out of the way. Let them have their time with me." He disappeared around the corner before I could answer. I sat there with my spoon halfway to my mouth and let that sentence settle over me like weather. Try not to be seen. I told myself it was practical. He had hundreds of people coming, fellow officers, Pentagon officials, old friends from Fort Bragg and Camp Lejeune, and deployments I'd never been allowed to fully understand. He didn't need his daughter hovering around making introductions awkward. That's what I told myself. I changed into an old pair of jeans, pulled my dark hair into a knot at the back of my neck, and went to work. The garage held 32 folding chairs stacked in 4 columns. I dragged them out 2 at a time, popping each one open with the practiced snap of someone who had set up many a church hall and community event in her life. I lined them neatly along the fence, checked the spacing with my eye, adjusted 3 of them that were tilting slightly in the soft ground. It was good work, quiet work. The kind I'd always been decent at. The kind nobody really notices until it isn't done. By 11:30, the chairs were perfect. The catering team had arrived and the tent was going up. I could hear Mom's laughter drifting from the kitchen window. I stayed near the fence line, out of the way of everyone moving with purpose around the yard. I had a glass of water. I watched a cardinal land on the bird bath near the rose bushes Mom had been nursing for 4 years. I was invisible. Then I heard the side gate open. A guest. Early. A man in his mid-60s, dressed not in uniform, but with the kind of posture that told you he'd worn one for decades. He came around the back of the house the wrong way, through the garden path, and stopped when he saw me. He watched me snap open another chair, a spare one I was adjusting near the end of the row. And then he said something that changed the rest of the afternoon. His name, I would later learn, was Colonel Thaddeus Birch Monroe. Retired, decorated, and apparently constitutionally incapable of arriving anywhere on time, including early. He was a compact man with silver-white hair cut close to the scalp and the kind of tan that came from decades of outdoor service rather than leisure. He wore a navy blazer over a white button-down, no tie, brown leather shoes polished to a reasonable shine. There was a slight catch in his right knee when he walked. Old injury, I guessed, without knowing why I guessed it. He looked at me for a moment with an expression I couldn't immediately read. "General," he said, "what are you doing?" I blinked, opened my mouth, closed it. I'm not the general, sir," I said. "I'm Renly, his daughter." Colonel Monroe didn't move. His eyes traveled from my face to the rows of chairs behind me, set in two clean lines with a center aisle, and back to my face again. Something shifted in his expression, not embarrassment, more like recalibration. "Renly," he repeated. He said it the way older military men say things, not as a question, not as small talk, but as a piece of information being filed correctly. "He asked me to set up the chairs," I offered, unnecessarily. Colonel Monroe looked at the chairs again. Then he looked at me with an expression that was harder to dismiss. "Half this neighborhood is safe because of your father," he said. "I imagine you know that." "I know some of it," I said honestly. "Do you know what he did in Kandahar in 2009? "Pieces." He nodded slowly, like that was the right answer. "Do you know what he told me before his last deployment? He said the thing that kept him sharp wasn't protocol, wasn't training." He paused. "It was knowing his family was home, that there was a home to come back to." I didn't say anything. There wasn't anything to say. "Put that chair down, Renly." I looked at the chair in my hand. I set it down. "Your father built his career on refusing to be invisible," Colonel Monroe said, and now his voice had that tone, not unkind, but completely unbending. "He walked into rooms he wasn't invited into. He spoke up when silence was the safer career move. He made himself known when it cost him something." He tilted his head slightly. "And he sent you out here to set up chairs and disappear before his guests arrived?" He didn't say it cruelly. He said it the way you say something that needs to be examined in the light. I felt something complicated move through my chest, loyalty and recognition fighting each other. "He just didn't want me in the way," I said, and even as I said it, I heard how small it sounded. "You're his daughter," Colonel Monroe said simply. "You're not in anyone's way. You are part of what he's celebrating today, whether he's remembered to tell you that or not." He looked at the chairs one more time. "These are beautifully set up, by the way," he added with the faintest, driest humor. I laughed despite myself. It came out surprised and real. He gestured toward the back door. "Go inside, get cleaned up. Come back out and stand next to your father when people arrive. That's where you belong." I went inside. I stood at the bathroom sink for a long moment, water running cold over my wrists, and looked at myself in the mirror the way you sometimes do when a stranger has said something that accidentally lands on a truth you've been avoiding. I washed my face, changed into the blue dress I'd almost worn that morning and then talked myself out of, brushed out my hair, put on the small gold earrings my grandmother, Cecile Ray, had given me the Christmas before she passed, the ones I saved for days that felt like they mattered. By the time I came back outside, more guests had arrived. I recognized some of them: Colonel Patricia Wentworth Briggs, who had served alongside my father in Germany; Marcus Deshawn Holloway, his longest-serving aide, now stationed in Colorado; Dr. Renata Polk Simmons, the base physician who had kept Dad healthy through more than he'd ever described at dinner. They were standing near the tent, drinks in hand, talking. Dad was in the center of it, doing that thing he did, listening more than speaking, but commanding the energy of the conversation by sheer presence. I walked across the yard. He saw me coming and something crossed his face. Surprise, maybe. I was supposed to be near the fence line. I was supposed to be out of the way. But I kept walking, and Colonel Monroe, who was now standing a respectful distance from the group with a glass of sweet tea, caught my eye and gave one small nod. I stepped up beside my father. There was a beat, just a beat, and then Colonel Patricia Wentworth Briggs said, "Renly Joe Hargrove, look at you. Last time I saw you, you were 15 and arguing with your father about whether the Geneva Conventions applied to bedtime curfews." The group laughed. Dad laughed. Real laughter, the kind that surprised him. He looked at me for a moment, and I saw something I didn't have a name for move through his expression. Not quite apology, not quite pride, something older and quieter than both. He put his hand briefly on my shoulder, just briefly, but I felt it. Later, when the party was winding down and the string lights were glowing gold against the darkening sky, Dad found me near the rose bushes where I'd been talking with Marcus's daughter, a sharp 12-year-old named Imani Bree, who wanted to know if I'd ever been to Washington. "You got dressed up," he said. It wasn't a complaint. It was an observation. "Colonel Monroe told me to put down the chair," I said. Dad was quiet for a moment. "Thad Monroe always did have more sense than the rest of us." He looked out at the yard, the chairs, the tent, the people, and I understood that this was as close as Raymond Colt Hargrove was going to get tonight to, I should have said it differently this morning. It was enough. It was, actually, more than enough. A lesson worth carrying. The people who love us most are sometimes the ones who accidentally teach us to make ourselves small, not out of cruelty, but out of habit, distraction, or the quiet blindness that familiarity can grow. It often takes a stranger, a Colonel Thaddeus Monroe arriving 10 minutes early through the wrong gate, to say the obvious thing out loud. You belong here. You don't have to earn your place at the celebration of someone you helped build. Invisible labor is real labor, and showing up, dressed, present, and unwilling to disappear, is sometimes the most important thing you will do all day.